Lila lived in a small, cluttered apartment on the 5th floor of an old building. It wasn't much, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that doubled as her studio. But it was hers. Every inch of the space was filled with evidence of her passion for art. Canvases leaned against walls, some finished, others half done, their surfaces splattered with colors that seemed to tell stories only Lila understood. Tubes of paint were scattered across tables, brushes stood upright in jars filled with murky water, and scraps of paper littered the floor, each bearing sketches or scribbled notes. Art had always been her escape. When life got too heavy, she would pick up a brush and let the colors flow. Painting made her feel alive, like she could create entire worlds out of nothing but pigment and imagination. But lately, creating those worlds had become harder. Money was tight, and rent was due, again. She hadn't sold any paintings in months, and commissions were few and far between. Still, she kept working late into the night, determined to make something beautiful even if no one else saw it. One rainy Tuesday morning, everything changed. Lila sat nervously in a cold doctor's office, clutching the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the pale walls. Across from her, Dr. Patel shuffled through papers before finally looking up. His expression said more than his words ever could. "I'm sorry," he began gently, "but the tests confirm it. You have cancer." The words hit her like a freight train. For a moment, all she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Cancer. The word felt foreign, unreal, like it belonged to someone else's story, not hers. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't voice. How bad was it? What did this mean for her future? Would she lose her hair? Could she afford treatment? Dr. Patel explained that chemotherapy would be necessary, but the costs were staggering. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. Lila listened numbly, nodding when appropriate, though none of it really sank in. By the time she left the clinic, the rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low over the city, mirroring the heaviness in her chest. That evening, back in her apartment, Lila stared at her latest painting, a swirling, abstract piece dominated by shades of blue and gold. It was supposed to represent hope, but now it just looked mocking. Hope didn't pay bills or cover medical expenses. With a sigh, she picked up her phone and opened an app she'd downloaded weeks ago but never used. It was called ArtLink, a platform where artists could sell their work directly to buyers. She hesitated, then uploaded 3 of her favorite pieces, pricing them modestly. Days passed without any interest. Just as Lila was about to give up, a notification popped up on her phone. Someone had purchased one of her paintings, the abstract, swirls of blue and gold, for $500. To most people, that might not seem like much, but to Lila, it was a lifeline. Encouraged, she listed more pieces, pouring her frustration, fear, and determination into every stroke of her brush. Slowly, orders trickled in. Not enough to solve all her problems, but enough to keep her going. But something strange started happening. As she painted, she noticed symbols appearing in her work, shapes and patterns she didn't consciously create. At first they were subtle, almost hidden within the layers of color. Swirling lines formed intricate designs that resembled runes or hieroglyphs. Lila chalked it up to stress, assuming her subconscious was playing tricks on her. But the symbols grew bolder, taking center stage in her compositions. They glowed faintly under certain lights, shimmering like stars trapped in oil paint. Her dreams became stranger too. Night after night, she found herself standing in vast, endless landscapes bathed in twilight hues. In these dreams, a towering figure loomed in the distance, cloaked in shifting shadows. Its presence filled her with both awe and unease. Sometimes it spoke, its voice deep and resonant, though she couldn't understand the words. Other times it simply watched her, its gaze piercing yet oddly comforting. One particularly vivid dream left her shaken. She stood in a field of glowing grass, the air buzzing with energy. The figure approached her, closer than ever before. As it reached out a hand, she woke with a start, her heart racing. That morning, she inspected her newest painting, and gasped. There, embedded in the swirling colors, was the same figure from her dreams. This time there was no denying it. The symbols weren't random. They meant something. Despite her growing unease, Lila couldn't stop painting. Each new piece brought her closer to understanding whatever force was guiding her hand. And though she didn't know it yet, her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. Somewhere beyond the stars, someone or something was watching, waiting. The next few days passed in a blur for Lila. She was torn between the excitement of selling her artwork and the gnawing unease brought on by the strange symbols that kept appearing in her paintings. Each time she picked up a brush, it felt like something or someone was guiding her hand, shaping her strokes into patterns she didn't fully understand. The dreams about the towering figure grew more vivid, almost tangible, as if he were trying to communicate with her through fragmented images and sounds. One crisp Saturday morning, Lila decided to take a break from her studio and set up a booth at a local art fair. It wasn't glamorous, a folding table draped with a plain white cloth, but it gave her a chance to showcase her work to people face to face. She arranged her paintings carefully, making sure the ones with the mysterious symbols were front and center. Maybe someone would recognize them. Maybe someone could explain what they meant. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the park filled with visitors browsing stalls selling handmade jewelry, pottery, and other crafts. A few curious passers-by stopped at Lila's booth, complimenting her bold use of color and unique style, but none of them lingered long enough to buy anything. By mid-afternoon, Lila began to feel discouraged. Was she wasting her time? Would anyone ever truly appreciate her art? Just as she was about to pack up and leave, a sudden chill swept through the air, raising goosebumps on her arms. The chatter around her seemed to fade into the background, replaced by an eerie silence. Lila glanced up, her heart skipping a beat, when she saw him standing there. He was enormous, easily 7 feet tall, and his presence commanded attention. His skin shimmered like liquid mercury, reflecting the sunlight in dazzling waves. He wore a sleek black suit that looked tailored specifically for his massive frame, and his eyes glowed faintly, like twin moons suspended in shadow. Despite his intimidating size, there was something oddly comforting about him, as if his very existence radiated calm authority. "You've been calling me," he said, his voice deep and resonant, each word rolling off his tongue like thunder. Lila blinked, certain she'd misheard him. I'm sorry?" she stammered, clutching the edge of her table for support. "Calling you?" The giant nodded slowly, his glowing gaze fixed on her. "Yes. Through your art, your symbols. They are ancient codes, part of my language." Lila's mind raced. Ancient codes? Language? What was he talking about? She opened her mouth to respond but found herself speechless. Instead, she gestured weakly toward one of her paintings displayed on the table. "You mean these?" The giant stepped closer, bending slightly to examine the canvas. His movements were deliberate, almost reverent. "These," he confirmed, pointing to the swirling symbols embedded in the paint. "They are fragments of ethereal resonance, a force capable of altering reality itself." Ethereal resonance. The phrase sent shivers down Lila's spine. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, not real life. Yet here she was, standing face to face with what could only be described as an alien being, discussing concepts that defied logic. "I don't understand," Lila admitted finally, shaking her head. "How am I doing this? Why is this happening to me?" The giant straightened, studying her with an intensity that made her feel both exposed and understood. "My name is Big Shaq," he said after a pause. "I am a representative of the Vrin Collective, an intergalactic organization dedicated to preserving rare forms of creative energy. And you, Lila, are creating something extraordinary." Her knees wobbled, threatening to give way beneath her. "Wait, how do you know my name?" Big Shaq tilted his head slightly as if amused by her question. "Your energy signature is unmistakable. We have been monitoring it for some time now." Lila took a step back, overwhelmed by the implications of what he was saying. Monitoring her? For how long? Before she could ask, Big Shaq continued. Your illness, it is connected to your ability to channel ethereal resonance. If left unchecked, it will consume you entirely. His tone softened, though his words carried weight. But there is another path. What kind of path? Lila asked cautiously, narrowing her eyes. Big Shaq hesitated, as if choosing his next words carefully. Join me. Come with me across the stars and I will teach you how to control your powers. In return, I offer you access to advanced medical technology capable of curing your condition. For a moment, all Lila could hear was the sound of her own breathing. Cure her cancer? Travel across the galaxy? It sounded too good to be true. And yet, looking into Big Shaq's luminous eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was telling the truth. But why me? She whispered, voicing the question that had haunted her since the strange symbols first appeared in her work. Why does this resonance choose me? Big Shaq regarded her thoughtfully. That is a question even we do not fully understand. But one thing is certain. You possess a gift unlike any other. A gift that has the potential to reshape worlds. Lila swallowed hard, her mind racing. This was madness. Complete and utter madness, and yet, wasn't it also an opportunity? An escape from the suffocating reality she'd been living in? She thought about her cramped apartment, the mounting medical bills, the endless cycle of fear and uncertainty. What did she really have to lose? Okay, she said quietly, surprising even herself. I'll go with you. Big Shaq nodded approvingly, a flicker of relief crossing his metallic features. Then prepare yourself, Lila. Our journey begins tonight. As the crowd began to disperse and dusk settled over the park, Lila packed up her booth, her hands trembling with a mix of excitement and dread. When she turned back, Big Shaq was already waiting, his towering form casting a long shadow across the grass. Without another word, he extended a hand toward her. Trusting her instincts, or perhaps driven by sheer desperation, Lila reached out and took it. The instant their hands touched, the world around her dissolved into light. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself aboard what could only be described as a spaceship. The interior was sleek and futuristic, with walls that pulsed softly with iridescent hues. Strange devices hummed in the corners, and holographic displays floated in midair, displaying streams of data written in unfamiliar scripts. This is the Luminal Voyager, Big Shaq explained, leading her through the ship's corridors. It will carry us to the heart of the Vrin Collective. Layla followed silently, her senses overwhelmed by the sights and sounds around her. They passed several crew members along the way, each more alien than the last. One had translucent skin stretched taut over a skeletal frame, while another resembled a floating orb of light encased in crystalline armor. Despite their differences, they all greeted Big Shaq with respect, bowing their heads or murmuring greetings in melodic tones. Eventually, they arrived at a large chamber filled with screens, projecting images of distant galaxies and star systems. Two figures stood waiting for them. A woman with neon tattoos spiraling across her arms and a man clad in ornate armor etched with intricate designs. Allow me to introduce you to Nova, Big Shaq said, gesturing to the tattooed woman. Our chief engineer and Tyrus, our resident warrior poet. Nova smirked, leaning casually against a console. So this is the human artist who's been causing such a stir? Nice to meet you, kid. Tyrus inclined his head formally. Your creativity is remarkable. Few beings possess the raw talent required to harness ethereal resonance. Lila managed a weak smile, still struggling to process everything. Thanks, I guess. Over the next few hours, Big Shaq and his crew explained more about the Vrin Collective and their mission to preserve balance across universes. They spoke of collapsing dimensions, rogue factions seeking to exploit ethereal resonance for destructive purposes, and the delicate web of energies that held existence together. Though much of it went over her head, Lila listened intently, determined to grasp the magnitude of what she'd gotten herself into. As the ship soared through hyperspace, leaving Earth far behind, Lila stared out a viewport at the infinite expanse of stars. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, not just for herself but for the possibilities that lay ahead. Whatever challenges awaited her, she knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. As the luminal Voyager glided through the vastness of space, Lila began to settle into a strange rhythm aboard the ship. Days blurred together in the absence of natural light or Earth's gravity, but she found comfort in routine. Each morning, or what passed for morning on an interstellar vessel, she would wake up in her small cabin, its walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted like ocean waves. She'd join Nova and Tyrus in the galley for breakfast, where they shared stories over steaming cups of something called zithera, a drink that tasted like cinnamon mixed with electricity. Nova was easy to talk to, her sarcastic humor masking a sharp intellect. She often teased Lila about being the chosen one, while explaining the intricacies of ethereal resonance. "It's not magic," Nova said one day, leaning back in her chair. "Well, technically it is, but sciencey magic. You're basically channeling raw creative energy from the fabric of reality itself. Cool, right?" Tyrus, on the other hand, was quieter, his words measured and poetic. He spoke of balance, harmony, and the interconnectedness of all things. "Ethereal resonance is both a gift and a burden," he told Lila during one of their late-night conversations. "It can create beauty beyond comprehension, but it can also unravel worlds if misused." Big Shaq remained enigmatic, appearing mostly to check on Lila's progress or update her on their mission objectives. Despite his towering presence, there was a gentleness to him that put her at ease. Still, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding something back. Every time she asked about the prophecy Nova had mentioned in passing, he deflected her questions with vague answers. "Focus on mastering your abilities first," he'd say. "Understanding will come in time." To help Lila control her powers, Big Shaq set up a training room deep within the ship. It was a circular chamber filled with floating orbs of light that pulsed in sync with her emotions. At first, Lila struggled to make sense of the exercise. When she tried to focus, the orbs would flicker erratically, sometimes exploding into bursts of color. Frustration bubbled inside her as she failed repeatedly. "You're trying too hard," Nova observed one afternoon, watching from the sidelines. "Relax, let the energy flow naturally." "But how?" Lila snapped, wiping sweat from her brow. "I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing." "Think of it like painting," Tyrus suggested softly. "Let your instincts guide you. Trust yourself." Taking a deep breath, Lila closed her eyes and imagined herself back in her studio, brush in hand. Slowly, she let go of her doubts, allowing the familiar sensation of creation to wash over her. To her amazement, the orbs stabilized, forming intricate patterns that mirrored the symbols in her paintings. For the first time since leaving Earth, she felt truly connected to her art and to herself. Over the next few weeks, Lila grew stronger, learning to manipulate the energy with increasing precision. She discovered that her emotions played a key role. Joy created vibrant, swirling designs, while anger produced jagged bolts of light. Sadness, however, yielded soft, shimmering hues that reminded her of twilight skies. Despite her progress, tension simmered beneath the surface. Lila couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that Big Shaq wasn't telling her everything. One evening, after another grueling session in the training room, she confronted him. "Why me?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "Why does this resonance choose me? And don't give me some vague answer about destiny or whatever." Big Shaq sighed, his glowing eyes dimming slightly. "Because you are unique, Lila. Your ability to channel ethereal resonance stems from a deeper connection, a bond forged long before you were born." "What does that mean?" she pressed, frustration creeping into her voice. He hesitated, then gestured for her to follow him. They walked in silence to a secluded part of the ship, where a holographic display hovered above a pedestal. With a wave of his hand, Big Shaq activated the projection. Images of ancient civilizations, crumbling temples, and glowing artifacts filled the air. "This is the prophecy of balance," he explained, his tone somber. "For centuries my people have awaited the arrival of a harbinger, a being capable of restoring harmony to fractured realities. The symbols in your paintings, they are fragments of this prophecy." Lila stared at the images, her stomach twisting with unease. "So you're saying I'm this harbinger?" Big Shaq nodded, slowly. "Yes, but embracing this role comes at a cost. To fully harness ethereal resonance, you must surrender your humanity. Your essence will merge with the energy, becoming something greater, but also something less." The weight of his words hit her like a punch to the gut. Surrender her humanity? Become something else entirely? She stumbled backward, shaking her head. No way, I didn't sign up for this." "I understand your fear," Big Shaq said gently, "but consider what you stand to lose if you refuse. Without balance, entire universes could collapse, including your own." Lila clenched her fists, torn between anger and despair. "You knew about this prophecy all along, didn't you? That's why you brought me here, to use me." "It was never about using you," Big Shaq replied firmly. "It was about giving you a choice, a chance to save yourself and countless others." The revelation sent shockwaves through the crew. Nova and Tyrus argued fiercely about whether Lila should be forced to fulfill the prophecy, their voices echoing down the ship's corridors. Nova believed it was her decision alone, while Tyrus insisted duty outweighed personal desires. Caught in the middle of their debate, Lila retreated to her cabin, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. She thought about Earth, the life she'd left behind, the people who cared about her. Could she really sacrifice everything for a cause she barely understood? Yet, as much as she wanted to run away, she couldn't deny the pull of her newfound abilities. Painting had always been her escape, her way of making sense of the world. Now it seemed her art had become something far more significant. That night, unable to sleep, Lila wandered to the observation deck. Through the massive viewport, she gazed at the endless expanse of stars, each one a distant sun lighting up unknown worlds. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine the possibilities, not just for herself but for everyone affected by ethereal resonance. What if she really could make a difference? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Tyrus approaching, his armor gleaming faintly in the low light. "May I join you?" he asked politely. She nodded, scooting over to make room. They sat in silence for a while, watching the cosmos stretch out before them like an infinite canvas. "You remind me of someone," Tyrus said finally, breaking the quiet. "A poet from my homeworld who once wrote, 'To create is to destroy, yet destruction births new beginnings.'" "That sounds complicated," Lila muttered, smiling faintly despite herself. "It is," Tyrus admitted, "but so is life. So is choice." Lila sighed, resting her chin on her knees. "Do you think I'm ready for this? For whatever comes next?" "No one is ever truly ready," Tyrus replied. "But readiness isn't the point. Courage is." His words lingered in her mind long after he left. As the ship sailed onward, carrying her further from everything she'd ever known, Lila realized she had reached a crossroads. Whatever path she chose, there would be no turning back. The journey continued, but the atmosphere aboard the luminal Voyager grew heavier with each passing day. Lila's training sessions became more intense, pushing her to her limits as she learned to wield ethereal resonance with precision. While she had grown accustomed to manipulating the glowing orbs in the training room, Big Shaq now introduced new challenges that tested not only her abilities, but also her resolve. One such challenge involved navigating a simulated environment, a shifting labyrinth of light and shadow designed to mimic unstable dimensions. As Lila stepped into the simulation, the walls shimmered like liquid glass, constantly rearranging themselves around her. Her task was simple yet daunting: stabilize the environment by channeling her energy to anchor it in place. At first, panic gripped her. Every time she tried to focus, the labyrinth twisted violently, threatening to collapse. Nova's voice echoed through the speakers, urging her to stay calm. "Don't fight it," she said. "Feel the flow. Let the energy guide you." Taking a deep breath, Lila closed her eyes and imagined herself painting, not on canvas, but within the very fabric of the simulation. Slowly, the chaos began to subside. The walls solidified into crystalline structures, their surfaces reflecting soft, golden light. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing in a serene, garden-like space bathed in warmth. "You're getting better," Big Shaq remarked afterward, though his tone lacked celebration. There was an edge of urgency in his voice, as if time was running out. Lila noticed the change in him too. He seemed distracted, often disappearing for hours at a time to consult with Nova or Tyrus about something they refused to discuss with her. The tension among the crew was palpable, and it didn't take long for Lila to piece together why. It started with whispers, snippets of conversations overheard when she wasn't supposed to be listening. One evening, while walking past the Yao main control room, she caught fragments of an argument between Big Shaq and Nova. "She deserves to know," Nova snapped, her neon tattoos flickering with agitation. "Keeping her in the dark isn't helping anyone. And telling her will only make things worse," Big Shaq countered, his voice low but firm. "She needs to focus on mastering her powers, not worrying about what's coming." "What's coming?" Lila blurted before she could stop herself, stepping into the doorway. Both Nova and Big Shaq turned to face her, their expressions guilty. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Big Shaq sighed, motioning for her to sit down. "There's a faction within the Vryn collective known as the Caliph Syndicate," he began reluctantly. "They believe ethereal resonance should be used as a weapon, to reshape universes according to their will. For years we've kept them in check, but recent events suggest they're growing bolder. They've been tracking us," Nova added grimly. "Specifically, they've been tracking you. They want to harness your abilities to destabilize entire star systems." Lila felt sick to her stomach. "But why me? Why can't they just find someone else?" "Because no one else has your connection to the prophecy," Tyrus explained, entering the room quietly. His armor glinted under the dim lights, his expression grave. "You are the harbinger of balance. To them, you represent both a threat and an opportunity." The weight of their words settled over her like a suffocating blanket. She thought back to the symbols in her paintings, the strange dreams, and the towering figure who had appeared at the art fair. Everything suddenly made sense, and yet, nothing did. How could she, an ordinary girl from Earth, possibly hold the fate of entire universes in her hands? A few days later, the ship received a distress signal from a nearby star system. A collapsing black hole was threatening to consume several planets, including one inhabited by millions of sentient beings. Without hesitation, Big Shaq ordered the crew to investigate. It was clear this mission wasn't optional. Stabilizing the black hole was critical to preventing catastrophe. As they approached the affected region, the scale of the disaster became apparent. Through the viewport, Lila watched as streams of debris spiraled toward the gaping maw of the black hole, its gravitational pull distorting space itself. Ships fleeing the area looked like tiny specks against the vastness of destruction. "This is where you prove yourself," Big Shaq told her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Use everything you've learned. Channel the resonance to create a barrier, a shield strong enough to contain the collapse." Lila nodded, though her heart pounded wildly. This wasn't a training exercise anymore. Lives depended on her success, or failure. With the crew monitoring her every move, she positioned herself in the center of the observation deck, surrounded by floating orbs of light. Closing her eyes, she reached deep within herself, drawing upon the same creative energy that had guided her brushstrokes back on Earth. At first, the power felt overwhelming, threatening to consume her entirely. But then she remembered Nova's advice: let the energy flow naturally. Slowly, the orbs expanded outward, forming a luminous web that enveloped the black hole. The ship shuddered as the gravitational forces pushed against the barrier, but Lila held firm, pouring every ounce of strength into maintaining the shield. Sweat dripped down her face and her muscles screamed in protest, but she refused to give up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the black hole stabilized. The swirling vortex slowed, its deadly pull neutralized by the shimmering cocoon of light. Cheers erupted throughout the ship as the crew celebrated their victory. Even Big Shaq allowed himself a rare smile. But Lila barely registered the applause. Exhausted, she collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. As the adrenaline faded, a wave of clarity washed over her. She had done it. She had saved countless lives. Yet the cost of wielding such immense power left her shaken. Was this truly her destiny? And if so, how much longer could she endure it? Back aboard the ship, Lila retreated to her cabin, seeking solace in solitude. She stared at her hands, still trembling from the effort of controlling the resonance. For the first time, she fully understood the burden placed upon her shoulders. Saving others came at a price, one she wasn't sure she could afford to pay. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Opening it, she found Tyrus standing there, his usual stoic demeanor softened by concern. "I wanted to check on you," he said simply. "You performed admirably today." "I don't feel admirable," Lila admitted, sinking onto her bed. "I feel scared. What happens when I can't do it anymore? When I lose control?" Tyrus sat beside her, his presence grounding. "Fear is natural. It reminds us of our mortality. But remember this. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. You've already shown remarkable strength." His words offered some comfort, but they couldn't erase the nagging doubt gnawing at her mind. If embracing her role as the harbinger meant sacrificing her humanity, was it worth it? Could she bear the loneliness of becoming something greater, but less human? Before she could dwell further on these questions, alarms blared throughout the ship. Rushing to the control room, Lila discovered the source of the disturbance. The Kalith Syndicate had found them. On the main view screen, a massive warship loomed, its jagged design resembling a predator ready to strike. A holographic message appeared revealing the leader of the syndicate, a gaunt figure with piercing red eyes and a voice like grinding metal. "Hand over the harbinger," he demanded, his tone dripping with menace. "Or face annihilation." Big Shaq stepped forward, his metallic frame radiating authority. "We will never surrender her," the warlord sneered. "Then prepare to die." As the enemy ship unleashed a barrage of weapons fire, chaos erupted aboard the Luminal Voyager. The crew scrambled to defend themselves, but it quickly became clear they were outnumbered and outgunned. Desperation filled the air as explosions rocked the vessel, sending sparks flying and alarms screaming. In the midst of the chaos, Lila realized she had no choice. Stepping into the heart of the battle, she raised her hands, summoning the full force of ethereal resonance. Light surged from her fingertips, forming a protective dome around the ship. The enemy's attacks bounced harmlessly off the barrier, buying the crew precious time to retaliate. But the effort drained her rapidly. Her vision blurred and her legs threatened to buckle beneath her. Just as she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, a voice whispered in her mind, the same deep, resonant voice from her dreams. "Trust yourself," it urged. "You are stronger than you know." Summoning every last ounce of strength, Lila unleashed a pulse of energy that rippled outward, disabling the enemy ship's weapon systems. The warlord let out a roar of frustration as his vessel retreated into the void, leaving behind only silence. Breathing heavily, Lila collapsed into Big Shaq's arms. The crew gathered around her, their faces filled with awe and gratitude, for the first time she truly understood the magnitude of her abilities and the sacrifices they demanded. Yet, even as they celebrated their narrow escape, Lila knew the fight was far from over. The Kalith Syndicate would return, and next time, they might not be so lucky. The aftermath of the battle left. The Luminal Voyager battered but intact. Sparks flew from damaged consoles and smoke lingered in the air, a grim reminder of how close they had come to destruction. Lila sat slumped in the corner of the control room, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her hands still tingled with residual energy, and her mind raced with thoughts she couldn't silence. She had saved them, again. But at what cost? Every use of ethereal resonance felt like chipping away at a fragile part of herself, as if each surge of power took something irreplaceable. Big Shaq knelt beside her, his glowing eyes filled with concern. "You've done more than anyone could have asked," he said softly. "But this isn't over. Kalith will regroup, and next time we may not be so fortunate." Lila looked up at him, her gaze sharp despite her fatigue. "Then tell me what I need to do. What's the end game here? Am I just supposed to keep fighting until there's nothing left of me?" Big Shaq hesitated, his massive frame seeming smaller under the weight of her question. "There is another option," he admitted finally. "One I hoped we wouldn't have to consider." Nova stepped forward, her neon tattoos flickering anxiously. "She deserves to know everything, Big Shaq. No more secrets." Tyrus nodded in agreement, his armor clinking softly as he moved closer. "It's time." For a moment no one spoke. Then Big Shaq sighed deeply and stood, gesturing for Lila to follow him. Together, the group made their way to the heart of the ship, a chamber unlike any other. Its walls pulsed with radiant light, and at its center floated a crystalline structure that seemed alive, shifting colors in sync with the hum of energy surrounding it. "This is the core nexus," Big Shaq explained. "It's the source of all ethereal resonance aboard the ship, and potentially your salvation." Lila frowned, stepping cautiously toward the glowing crystal. "What do you mean, my salvation?" Big Shaq exchanged a glance with Nova and Tyrus before continuing. "The prophecy foretells not only the arrival of the Harbinger, but also the ultimate sacrifice required to restore balance. To stop Kalith and prevent the collapse of fractured realities, you must merge your essence with the core nexus. By doing so, you'll become one with the resonance itself, a living embodiment of balance." Lila's stomach churned. "Merge my essence, you mean die?" "It's not death," Tyrus interjected gently. "Not exactly. Your consciousness will remain, woven into the fabric of existence. You'll exist beyond human limitations, capable of influencing countless dimensions, but you won't be human anymore." "And if I refuse?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then Kalith wins," Nova replied bluntly. "He'll exploit ethereal resonance to destroy entire star systems, leaving chaos in his wake. Countless lives, including those on Earth, will be lost." Silence fell over the chamber as the gravity of the situation settled around them. Lila stared at the core nexus, its pulsating light hypnotic yet terrifying. For weeks she had wrestled with fear, doubt, and uncertainty, clinging to the hope that she could somehow find a way out. Now, faced with the truth, she realized there was no escape, not without making an impossible choice. That night, unable to sleep, Lila wandered to the observation deck. Through the viewport she gazed at the endless expanse of stars, each one a distant sun lighting up unknown worlds. She thought about Earth, the small apartment cluttered with canvases, the art fairs where strangers had admired her work, the quiet moments spent painting alone. It all felt impossibly far away now, like fragments of a dream slipping through her fingers. Her thoughts turned to the people who cared about her. Would they remember her? Would they understand why she had chosen this path? Tears welled in her eyes as she imagined standing in her studio again, brush in hand, creating beauty from nothingness. Painting had always been her anchor, her way of connecting to the world. And now it seemed her art had become something far greater, a force capable of shaping reality itself. A soft voice broke the silence. "Still awake?" Turning, she saw Tyrus standing in the doorway, his armor gleaming faintly in the low light. He approached slowly, taking a seat beside her. Neither spoke for a while, content to watch the cosmos stretch endlessly before them. "You remind me of a story," Tyrus said finally, his tone thoughtful. "Of a poet who gave up everything to save her village from a great storm. In the end, she became the wind itself, forever guiding others even though she could never return home." Lila managed a weak smile. Sounds poetic, but real life doesn't work that way, does it? Perhaps not, Tyrus admitted. But sometimes, poetry becomes reality. Sometimes the choices we make define us in ways we cannot foresee. His words lingered in her mind long after he left. As the ship sailed onward, carrying her further from everything she'd ever known, Lila realized she had reached a crossroads. Whatever path she chose, there would be no turning back. The final confrontation came sooner than expected. While repairing damage from the previous battle, Nova detected a massive energy signature approaching fast. Calith had returned, with reinforcements. This time, his fleet consisted of dozens of ships, each bristling with weapons designed to tear apart both matter and energy. "We can't outrun them," Nova announced grimly as alarms blared throughout the ship. "They're too close." Big Shaq clenched his fists, his metallic skin shimmering with tension. "Prepare for evacuation. We'll hold them off as long as possible." "No," Lila said firmly, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her, surprise etched on every face. "We don't run. Not this time." "What are you saying?" Nova demanded, her voice sharp with worry. "I'm saying I've made my choice," Lila replied, her tone steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I'll merge with the core nexus. It's the only way to stop Calith. For good." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but none argued. They knew she was right. Moments later, Lila stood once again in the chamber housing the core nexus. The crystalline structure pulsed brighter as she approached, its energy resonating with hers. Big Shaq, Nova, and Tyrus gathered around her, their expressions a mix of sorrow and pride. "Are you sure about this?" Big Shaq asked quietly, his voice heavy with emotion. Lila nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but I'm ready." Nova placed a hand on her shoulder, her usual sarcasm replaced by genuine affection. "You're stronger than you think, kid. Remember that." Tyrus bowed his head respectfully. "Your courage will inspire generations to come. Thank you." Taking a deep breath, Lila stepped into the glowing embrace of the core nexus. As its energy enveloped her, memories flooded her mind. Painting her first canvas, selling her first piece, meeting Big Shaq, and everything that had led her to this moment. Pain surged through her body, but it was accompanied by a sense of peace, as if she were finally fulfilling her purpose. Outside the chamber, the ship shuddered violently as Calith's forces launched their attack. Explosions rocked the vessel, sending debris flying. Just as it seemed the end was near, a brilliant burst of light erupted from the core nexus, engulfing the entire ship and spreading outward into space. When the light faded, Calith's fleet was gone, scattered across the void. The threat had been neutralized. Back in the chamber, the core nexus pulsed steadily, now infused with Lila's essence. Though her physical form was gone, her presence remained, a beacon of balance and creativity woven into the fabric of existence. Weeks later, back on Earth, rumors spread of a mysterious star painter whose works continued to appear in galleries worldwide. Each piece bore traces of luminous symbols, shimmering faintly under certain lights. Some claimed the paintings held healing properties. Others believed they contained messages from beyond the stars. Though Lila was gone, her legacy lived on, bridging worlds and inspiring countless others. Somewhere among the infinite expanse of galaxies, her spirit soared, guiding universes toward harmony, and reminding everyone who encountered her art that even in the darkest times, beauty could still shine brightest.